President Trump says he's spoken with Kentucky's Democratic governor after 2 Louisville police officers, as we told you, were shot during last night's protests. Yesterday, the president was asked to comment on Breonna Taylor's case. And while he didn't address the grand jury's decision to not charge any of the officers involved with her killing, he did take time to praise the state's Republican Attorney General.
Well, I thought it was really brilliant. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is doing a fantastic job. I think he's a star. And he made a statement that I'll just read. Justice is not often easy. It does not fit the mold of public opinion, and it does not conform to shifting standards. It answers only to the facts and to the law.
Let's bring in Ben Tracy, who's following the latest from the White House. Ben, there was also kind of a surreal moment when a reporter pressed the president on some more on Breonna Taylor to get some more insight from him, and he said abruptly that he had to take an emergency phone call. I've never seen that in a White House press briefing. Do we know what that call was, and did the president return?
There does not seem to have been an emergency last night. From what we're hearing, the president had a couple campaign events that he was doing virtually, as well as making some fundraising calls. So I don't think that was there was no national emergency that we're aware of.
So do we know if he's planning to do anything, if he's planning to talk to the governor, if he's planning to talk to the attorney general about this?
Yeah, so the president says that he has talked to the governor there. The president has said that he's happy that they declared that state of emergency, that the National Guard had been at least put on standby. Apparently, you heard him praise the Republican Attorney General of Kentucky. That's perhaps not surprising. Daniel Cameron was part of the Republican National Convention praising President Trump. So you're seeing a very different response from President Trump to what we're seeing in Kentucky and in Louisville than we have seen in what the president would refer to as some other blue states around the country, where he has basically threatened the full force of the federal government. The president did use his Twitter feed, perhaps predictably, to call for law and order.
So, at the briefing, the president was asked what should be a pretty sort of simple question, whether or not he would participate in a peaceful transition of power should voters choose not to re-elect him. Simple question. He did not respond with a simple answer. Here's what he had to say.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transfer of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
So the president continues to rail against mail-in ballots, even though he's used them before to vote himself. Senator Mitt Romney criticized these comments on Twitter, saying that the peaceful transition of power is what separates the U.S. from Belarus. And if you've been watching CBSN, you know about the protests there and that the leader there is about to embark on his 6th consecutive term. Have we heard from other Republicans, members of the administration, anyone else expressing concern or criticism for what the president had to say?
We are starting to hear from some Republicans. So far, not many, but their congressman has put out a tweet. We've heard from Senator Lindsey Graham a little bit tiptoeing around this. Senator Marco Rubio actually sent out a tweet just recently, and let me read that to you. He said, "As we have done for over 2 centuries, we will have a legitimate and fair election. It may take longer than usual to know the outcome, but it will be a valid one. And at noon on January 20th, 2021, we will peacefully swear in the president." So Marco Rubio, laying down a marker there, saying that this is just not something as the United States of America that we tolerate. You mentioned the question. Historically, that's the most softball of softball questions to ask a president of the United States. Obviously, the reporter knew that President Trump may answer in a different way than others have. We should not be entirely surprised. The president has said things like this before. He recently said that the only way he can lose the election is if it's rigged. So this is just kind of an escalation of, an attack that he's been making on mail-in ballots and trying to delegitimize this election before it even happens. The interesting thing would be if the president wins resoundingly on Election Day, he's laid the groundwork for this election being illegitimate. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Ben, also, I just want to jump in on that point. The question that the president answered, he talked about a continuation. Has the White House provided any clarity what the president was suggesting? Was the president suggesting when he said, get rid of the ballots, and that there won't be there won't be a peaceful transfer, there'll be a continuation? That's sort of you've never heard an American president say something like that ever.
Yeah, and sometimes the president speaks inartfully and perhaps a bit vaguely, and sometimes people say that he's doing that on purpose so people can kind of interpret what they want from what he's saying. The White House would explain that away and saying all the president meant is that he doesn't like these ballots that he thinks are illegitimate. If you took those out, he'll get reelected, and therefore there would be a continuation. It wasn't him saying that we should throw all the ballots in the trash and I should just remain president of the United States. However, as you point out, it's a very strange thing to hear a president of the United States say.
Ben, I want to talk to you about the Supreme Court vacancy. A front-runner for the nomination is Amy Coney Barrett. We actually spoke to her. Myself and my colleague Elaine Keano spoke to her in 2016, shortly after the death of Justice Antonin Scalia. And the debate over filling his seat, very similar time. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Kennedy is a moderate Republican, and he replaced a moderate Republican, Powell. We're talking about Justice Scalia, the staunchest conservative on the court, and we're talking about him being replaced by someone who could dramatically flip the balance of power on the court. It's not a lateral move. And finally, the reality is we live in a different time. Confirmation hearings have gotten far more contentious. And so I just don't think we live in the same kind of time. So I think in sum, the president has the power to nominate and the Senate has the power to act or not. And I don't think either one of them can claim that there's a rule governing one way or the other.
All right, so interesting times. What's the latest on the White House's vetting of the nominee finalists, and do they feel that they know who the pick will be?
So the smart money is still on Amy Coney Barrett. At this point, I think it would be surprising if it's not her, based on what we're hearing from Capitol Hill and the support for her amongst very important people like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. But also, when you hear the president talk about this at his briefing yesterday, he was asked if he has any plans to meet with Barbara Lagoa, who has been floated as kind of the other top contender here. And the president, perhaps tellingly, said, no, I don't have any plans to have a meeting. I've been talking to a lot of people, but no, I don't have any plans to have a meeting. It's hard to believe that there wouldn't be a meeting with somebody before he nominated them for the Supreme Court, especially since the president's going to actually be in Miami today, her hometown. So that perhaps does not bode well for her. But no, the smart money is still on Amy Coney Barrett at this point, and I think a lot of people would be surprised if that's not who the president nominates on Saturday here at the White House.
All right, Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.